George Orwell stands as one of the most influential political writers of the 20th century, responsible for crafting two of the most politically analytical and prophetic works of the modern era, Animal Farm and 1984. These books not only exposed the dangers of authoritarianism, propaganda, and political deceit, but also became essential texts in understanding how power corrupts and how mass control is maintained. Orwell's ability to dissect totalitarianism, especially in its Soviet form, made him an intellectual giant whose works continue to be referenced in discussions about state oppression and the manipulation of truth. Yet, when measured against the Spartan Mindset, an ethos that demands integrity, resilience, and an unbreakable commitment to truth and honor, Orwell's legacy is far more complicated. While he positioned himself as an unwavering critic of totalitarian rule, his personal choices reveal a stark contradiction. The man who wrote so passionately about state surveillance and thought control was, in reality, working hand in hand with the very apparatus he warned against. His documented cooperation with the British intelligence services, particularly his infamous list of suspected communists and leftist sympathizers, reveals an allegiance not to absolute truth, but to a selective battle against tyranny, one that aligned with British imperial interests rather than an uncompromising defense of human freedom. This revelation casts a long shadow over Orwell's credibility. For someone who championed the idea that all-powerful states inevitably distort reality for their own gain, it is deeply ironic that he actively assisted one of the most powerful intelligence networks of the 20th century. The British Empire, which had spent centuries perfecting the art of domination, subjugation, and control, was not exactly an innocent force against the evils of Stalinism. If Orwell had been a true exponent of the Spartan mindset, he would have exposed all authoritarianism with equal fervor. Instead, he selectively directed his fire at one side while silently aiding the other. Orwell's collaboration with British intelligence becomes even more troubling when examined within the larger context of his political evolution. He began his career as a staunch socialist, aligning himself with anti-fascist movements and even fighting in the Spanish Civil War against Franco's forces. This experience, which he documented in Homage to Catalonia, played a pivotal role in shaping his disdain for Stalinist communism. However, his disillusionment with the Soviet-backed factions in Spain did not turn him into an impartial critic of oppression. Instead, it pushed him into the arms of British imperial interests, where he seemingly abandoned his commitment to exposing all forms of tyranny. The most damning evidence of his hypocrisy lies in the so-called Orwell list, a secret document he provided to the British government, naming individuals he suspected of being communist sympathizers. This was not merely a case of personal opinion. It was an active contribution to state surveillance, potentially ruining careers and lives. Orwell, the supposed champion of free thought, was playing an integral role in the very system of control and repression he so vividly described in 1984. This act, viewed through the lens of the Spartan mindset, is a fundamental betrayal of principle. A true Spartan does not compromise their integrity for the sake of aligning with a powerful institution, nor do they selectively apply their moral compass. If Orwell truly believed in freedom from oppression, he would have exposed the duplicity of all major world powers, including his own government. Adding to this contradiction is Orwell's position on British colonialism. While he occasionally criticized the empire, particularly in his essay, Shooting an Elephant, he never fully condemned British imperialism in the same way he did Soviet communism. This selective moral outrage suggests a deeply ingrained bias, one that prioritized attacking foreign authoritarian regimes while excusing or downplaying the crimes of the British state. If Orwell had been committed to the Spartan ideal of facing hard truths regardless of personal cost, he would have confronted the British establishment with the same unflinching critique he reserved for Stalinist Russia. Instead, he became a tool of that very establishment, helping to suppress voices that challenged its authority. Orwell's contradictions extend beyond his political affiliations and into the very nature of his work. Animal Farm and 1984 are widely regarded as masterpieces of political literature, warning against authoritarian control, propaganda, and the erosion of personal freedoms. Yet, the man behind these works was, in practice, aiding an imperial system that engaged in much of what he denounced. The British state, during and after Orwell's lifetime, maintained an extensive surveillance network, controlled dissent through media manipulation, and engaged in imperialist policies that restricted the autonomy of entire nations. If Orwell had truly adhered to the values he espoused in his writing, he would have turned his pen against these injustices with equal fervor. Instead, his focus remained overwhelmingly on critiquing left-wing totalitarianism, leaving right-wing and imperialist structures relatively untouched. This raises an important question. Was Orwell a mere opportunist, or did he genuinely believe he was serving a greater good? Some defenders argue that his cooperation with British intelligence was a pragmatic response to what he saw as an immediate threat: Soviet communism. However, a Spartan mindset does not allow for such selective integrity. True Spartans do not compromise on principle, nor do they betray others in the pursuit of perceived security. Orwell's decision to provide names to the British government places him in stark contrast to figures like Julian Assange or Glenn Greenwald, who have taken great personal risks to expose the abuses of Western governments. Unlike them, Orwell ultimately chose to align himself with the mechanisms of power rather than to challenge them outright. The tragedy of Orwell's legacy is that his work remains more relevant than ever. Yet his own actions diminish the purity of his message. 1984 has been invoked time and again to describe modern surveillance states, government overreach, and corporate control of information. His insights into language manipulation, doublethink, and perpetual war remain invaluable tools for analyzing contemporary politics. And yet, the man himself did not embody the unflinching courage required to live by those principles in his own life. A Spartan does not pick and choose which enemies to fight based on convenience. A Spartan does not work in the shadows to undermine others while preaching transparency. A Spartan does not write about the dangers of totalitarianism while contributing to a system that thrives on control. In the final analysis, George Orwell was no Spartan. His words may have been revolutionary, but his actions were those of a man who ultimately sought protection within the very establishment he seemed to oppose. To truly embrace the Spartan mindset, one must not only speak truth to power, but also live by those truths without compromise. Orwell's works serve as invaluable guides to understanding manipulation and control, but his actions reveal the dangers of selective integrity. It is not enough to recognize oppression in one form while enabling it in another. The Spartan mindset demands unwavering principles, even when the cost is high. Order the Spartan mindset today, and take the first step toward becoming the leader your world needs. Let your struggles forge you into a warrior of character and resolve. The Spartan Mindset provides all this and more in an original, comprehensive, and actionable guide. Available now for just $19.99. Buy your copy from the links in the description box below and on this channel's homepage, because your future begins with the right mindset, the Spartan Mindset.